Off between Canal Plus and part of the French film industry is intensifying after bringing news channel iTélé, which is now called CNews, as well as the Sunday newspaper Le Journal du Dimanche, and the Grasset publishing house under his control. The film industry fears that Vincent Bolloré may be tightening his grip on cinema too. Some 600 figures from the industry have already expressed concern over the takeover of the sector by the group owned by the billionaire. A petition calling people to mobilise against what they described as the growing grip of the far right on the film industry under the influence of Bolloré and the Canal Plus group. Signatories included the French superstar actress Juliette Binoche, as well as director Arthur Harari, who wrote the Oscar-winning Anatomy of a Fall in 2023 and is premiering his The Unknown in the main competition at the Cannes Film Festival. So, the billionaire, the broadcaster and the French filmmaking industry, or the good, the bad and the Bolloré. Here's Emerald Maxwell.
The mood appears light on the red carpet at Cannes Film Festival, but behind the scenes, an open war is rocking the French film industry. Last week, 600 leading industry figures signed an op-ed against the growing influence of the far right on the film industry under French billionaire Vincent Bolloré and his Canal Plus group. The CEO of the company reacted angrily on Sunday.
I saw this petition as an injustice towards the Canal teams, who are committed to defending Canal Plus's independence and the full range of its programming choices. As a result, I will no longer work with, nor do I want Canal to work with, the people who signed this petition.
These people include the likes of actress Juliette Binoche and director Arthur Harari, who co-wrote the Oscar-winning Anatomy of a Fall, and whose film The Unknown is in competition at Cannes. The editorial expressed particular concern over Canal Plus's intention to acquire, by 2028, full ownership of UGC, a powerful cinema chain with 55 movie theatres in France and Belgium. Behind this acquisition lies the fear that films will become increasingly uniform, from production to distribution. Canal Plus is already French cinema's leading financier, funding an average of 160 million euros per year. Speaking by phone from Cannes, the head of the public body that regulates and funds the film industry in France called for calm.
This raises questions in terms of freedom of expression. You might be all the more astonished by this reaction, given that Canal has until now always upheld this principle by supporting all filmmakers. So I fully respect the stance of the op-ed signatories, but we mustn't stray from the facts.
For the op-ed signatories, though, Canal Plus's threat of censorship confirms their worst fears. The uproar mirrors the upheaval in the media and publishing worlds, where Bolloré, a conservative close to far-right politicians, is reshaping businesses he controls, from television channels to publishing houses.
Let's get the analysis. We're joined by Renaud Foucart, Senior Lecturer in Economics at Lancaster University, up there in the northwest of England. Renaud Foucart, always a pleasure to have you with us. This situation is of genuine concern. There is a sense in France that people such as Vincent Bolloré, because there's more than just one billionaire in France, are taking control of the media to such an extent that there will be a single message that is pervaded in future, and that will have a real political meaning. However, another aspect here, and it coincides with the Cannes Film Festival as well, is that the creativity of French cinema could be at risk. What is your take on this situation?
One question is the concentration of the media in politics in France. So France has always a relatively naive, perhaps, view of regulation of politics and media, with the idea that when there is an election, all the candidates have the same time on each channel. And this is something that was generally widely respected. And the one thing that happened with Bolloré is that in the previous election, you've seen that he's been pushing the boundary. So he's semi-openly supporting Marine Le Pen's Rassemblement National, and he's been pushing and pushing, accepting to pay the fines from the regulator after the fact, but pushing his political agenda. So the fear is that in France, there is at the moment still a balance of power with a public broadcaster, France Télévisions. But what happens tomorrow if Marine Le Pen's far right gets in power and the entirely of the media landscape, just like in Hungary not long ago, becomes in the power of Bolloré? As for cinema, Canal Plus has been very long a major finance of cinema in France and around the world, seen as one of those like impertinent French movie funding. And there is the fear that this is something that would be lost, but this is perhaps less a political view in this case than, as you said, a view on creativity.
Indeed, creativity. Going back to the news thing that I think is extremely important, and at this point I will point out to anybody watching that France 24 is part of the public structure here in France. So I'm getting that out in the open, so there's no sense of anybody thinking that I'm keeping anything under wraps, although I think it is, of course, public knowledge that we are part of the state broadcasting system. Renaud, the situation that if you watch, say, for instance, what Canal Plus does with its news channel, there is really a real highlighting of certain far-right narratives, which perhaps get more airtime than perhaps they would merit.
Well, and mostly it's something that has been evolving very, very fast. So the main channel of the Bolloré empire on the media is a channel called CNews, and it's been a loss maker under the name iTélé in the past. But in recent years, it's become the #1 French news channel live in terms of market share. And so this channel in particular has been pushing a number of very prominent far-right characters, starting with Eric Zemmour, so the famous far-right writer, and more recently, and perhaps surprisingly to me, a very pro-Russian agenda. So they've been as far as giving a very regular platform to the former head of Russia Today in France, where she just openly goes and talks about the problems of France and why Russia is so fantastic. So just imagine for a second something like that in Russia. It would be totally unbelievable, of course.
Indeed. Now, in terms of what happens with cinema, clearly, are we really fearing that there could be some kind of propaganda agenda imposed by someone like Vincent Bolloré over French cinema in future?
I think it's seen as almost a culture wars. So if I take the point of view of people who are like Bolloré or supporter of Bolloré, they see people like the French state media, like Canal+, as basically a woke conspiracy of people trying to push left-wing ideas to viewers. And so they see themselves as some kind of European Fox News that would be pushing a counter narrative. So in that mindset, yes, I think there is a culture war. They would like to push a specific agenda, and it's clearly something that doesn't make, at the moment, the people who are the main recognized French artists happy.
So in terms of what the artists are saying, they're calling for some kind of action to preserve the independence and the freedom of thought that French cinema has thrived on forever, it seems. Do we really think that's at risk from Bolloré?
I think it is, and I think they are feeling that right now. You've shown the reaction from the boss of Canal+, saying we don't want to work with any of those people. So it will not be a great news to your viewers that being an artist is not exactly a job that brings a lot of security or a lot of money. So in France, there is a tradition of giving a better status to comedians, to artists, but also there is this tradition of financing crazy, different projects. And so now, if they are told that by the major private finance of cinema, so Canal+, that they are not allowed to get a job when the money comes from them, this is something that is highly threatening. And the idea, I guess, is to get some kind of omerta, that people would not dare to sign those kind of petitions or would not dare to go prominently criticize those far-right narratives, perhaps in the hope of getting a job next year.
Renaud Foucart, thank you very much indeed. It's Juliette Binoche who was the main star of that petition against Bolloré's increasing influence in French media and culture. Renaud Foucart with the analysis from Lancaster University, where he is a professor of economics. Thank you, Renaud, as ever, for joining us.